How's it going, everyone? This is going to be the little event recap, kind of event report video going over the recent June Norwalk, in which we competed with two robots, Critical Blunder over here and Yoink over here. Going to just go over a little bit of the damage, go over some of the parts of each of the fights, and just talk more about the experience of the recent time at Norwalk. Similar to how we used to do them, except this time we have two robots, because instead of doing it with one like we did in the past with Filibuster, we had two separate robots this time. Yoink, which was mine, and Critical Blunder, which was driven by Filming Buddy, of course. So we're just going to go over, going to talk a little bit about each of the robots and a bit more about their matchups. So I'm going to start a little bit talking about Yoink first, because it was my robot, so I know a good bit more about it. So of course we knew who we were fighting about the Tuesday before the event, which was on Saturday, and I got drawn up against I think it's YU is how it's pronounced, but it is I believe the thinnest beetle weight in the world, driven by Tim Bowens, who I believe was from the Reality and Ominous BattleBots team. So, in other words, a pretty dang hard first draw going up against a BattleBots opponent. And this was a fight that I was pretty excited for, though, because not really too often they're going to get an opportunity to fight someone like that, but the unfortunate part was that I did not have any real horizontal configurations at all. You may remember the older pictures of Yoink, which I'll put on screen. You can see that it has kind of shorter forks. These were longer forks, which I got recently cut before the event because I figured, probably better just to have longer forks put in for that, but I figured they probably wouldn't be too great going up against a horizontal like that. So I designed what I called the wheat forks, and I'll put those on screen now. Basically, I heard that Jelly Baby, who won one of the previous event, they had a Boleyn style fork config used against horizontals, and I'm like, you know what, sure, let's try that out. And then I came up with those. They were made very quickly, and realistically, they probably weren't the best idea to go with those, but in the end, I didn't really have a good dedicated horizontal config, so unfortunately, I just had to run with that. So I don't know if I'm actually able to show the footage of the YU fight, because that's the one that unfortunately I didn't get any recordings of, but if I can, or I get a green light, then I will show it right now. Okay, so if the fight was shown, then it was shown. If it wasn't, then it wasn't, but either way, you can watch it on the main Norwalk stream if you really are interested. I'll definitely put a link to it in the video in the description below. So going over a little bit about that fight. So it was going not too bad at the start, really. The forks were holding up pretty okay until, unfortunately, the back hinge of one of them, I don't have any of them with me right now because one of them I gave to the builder and the other one I put in that big bot bin that they have there. You can just put random bots and then take one out. It's just a little fun thing. But the forks themselves held up pretty well. One of them got a decent cut on the side, kind of like at the top, or like kind of like right here. You can kind of see there's a big tear right here. But that overall, they held up decently well, I would say. Of course, they did break off a little bit. It wasn't too bad. Going over some of the damage from that fight, though, near the end, I noticed that the servo had definitely taken a little bit of damage. This is a different one, but I'm pretty sure, 99% sure, that this Just Cause servo, which been using, because it's mounted so high, it's kind of vulnerable to some horizontal shots, and I noticed at the end of the fight it was getting a little bit slower, and it seemed like there was something off about it, but it probably took a bad direct hit. I did have this little cap that I made, which was meant to defend against and protect some hits from the servo, but going off this event, I don't really think it did enough. The drive did also fail a little bit, and that's unfortunate because the way all this is set up is that there's just these screws that go in, and one of those screws backed out because these wheels are pretty loose, but unfortunately I didn't have enough time to address that before, and as a result, once it pulled out, the drive got kind of wonky because of that, but at least it still did move and the weapon was still working, and in the end it was a pretty fun fight. Something I think the announcers mentioned was there was a period of time where it was like why it was kind of flipped, but I didn't go in. My logic for that was because it was basically on its way to kind of getting flipped, I didn't want to risk me flipping it back over by going into it, which I feared was more likely to happen than me doing something to get it flipped back over. So that is why I didn't go in there, which is, should I have gone in? Maybe, but I didn't. And, that's just how it is. In the end, it was a loss pretty clearly for Yoink, but, it was still quite a fun fight, if I do say so myself. And the builder of YU came over quite a bit of times to check on how we were doing at the event, so massive shout out to him, incredibly nice guy, and in the end, it was a really awesome fight. Really happy to get that opportunity. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Critical Blunder now, because I never mentioned it before really much because it was kind of a late build. So in the end, it's pretty simple. A hammer saw. It was going to be a hammer saw, but unfortunately that mechanism had issues. So it's kind of more of a, I would say like a switchback style, like articulating spinner. So it has the servo here, and I'll explain a little bit more about the issues that we had in a little bit. But idea is pretty simple. Drive wheels, it is a repeat drive. The drive motors in here right now are not repeat drive, but they were the repeat brushed motors. And then we just had this connected to the channel through like one of the main sticks on the controller. And then the spinner was just controlled by one little switch that had some customization. So we could either go like half throttle or full throttle, depending on whatever we wanted to do. You'll see this little stick up here, and that's kind of what we'll talk about a little bit. So basically, we originally wired this up to run off the same Just Cuz servos that were used in Yoink, but we ran into some problems very late in getting it to work properly. I think that's probably partially because the BECs that we had, like, they just weren't great. And this was running on 3S, and those really weren't made to go on 3S, unfortunately. So we just switched to this one, which could handle 3S a little bit better. But the problem is that it only goes 90 degrees. So we had to make this little stick here. And the idea is that, okay, when it goes all the way back, it'll still be like that, but it'll actually be able to right itself now. That fight it had, you'll see why this did not work. But in the end, this thing was about 2.8 pounds. It was pretty good. And I felt like it was pretty decently armored. We did have the good side packages for the armored wheels, and the back was, you know, it felt like everything was good, but unfortunately it wasn't. This was matched up against Gulo Gulo, which I believe is from the Monkfish team, and it was a multi-bot. One was an SSP, and one was a undercutter spinner, which realistically, horrible matchup for this thing to go against, unfortunately. So going through what happened, I was not there because I had to prepare for my own fight, but the wedge got really badly beat up. It got flipped on its back, and it just wasn't able to self-right because this was not the servo we planned for. You can even see that we had to like cut out part to make it work, because originally it was meant to be a different gear ratio to allow it to like use this kind of servo but swing, and then that didn't work, and then we had to switch to another servo thing, and that didn't work, and we switched to another thing, and that didn't work. So basically, this robot, a lot of trouble to make it get to the point, and then unfortunately when it got there, it got a pretty unfortunate draw. It didn't even get any hammer shots in. I don't even know if the spinner spun up. I mean, I know it could, but I don't even think we had a chance to even get any shots in. So it's pretty rough, unfortunate run for this event, because I feel like it actually had some decent potential, unless it went up against a flamethrower, because this whole thing is almost TPU except for the aluminum and the fancy top plate, which base plate and top plate were aluminum. This one's a little bit thinner than the bottom, just to be safe on weight. But unfortunately, there's not really much else to say with the bot. Unfortunately, it was fun to make, but unfortunately, just had a lot of problems coming up to the event. So unfortunately, that was the only fight that Critical Blunder had at this event, because it ended up forfeiting its second fight. And if you're wondering why, it's because it was very not working too good after the repairs were made. We switched to different motors, the only backup motors we had, and we weren't able to get the hubs off of the old motors because they were like friction welded or something crazy on there after that fight. Basically, we couldn't get off the hubs to switch to the other good casted wheels that we were using. So FingerTech hubs and the wheels are not very grippy. You want to know why? Just watch some of the old Yeeter fights from New Bots 2024. And after that, we realized, yeah, Turbo Fiend was up next, which one of the best robots of the year, and there was no reason to get this thing basically ready for that when it was very likely just going to be absolutely destroyed. So that is the reason why it didn't end up fighting again. And talking about the region, it had to fight against the Monkfish team, which was very, very good team, and Gula Gula, which was also a pretty tough draw as a hammer saw against kind of a multi-bot like that. Turbo Fiend and Murphy's Law. And Murphy's Law, for those who didn't know, it made primetime this event until losing to, I believe, Sad Octopus in the quarterfinals. So this thing had a horrible region. Like, this was probably the worst possible region it could have gotten. All of the matchups were insanely tough. And it's unfortunately just going to be like that sometimes. But this bot, I don't know if it'll come back or not. It's mostly just up to whatever filming buddy wants to do. But in the end, that was the end of Critical Blunder's run. It was quite an unfortunate set of circumstances for this bot. So following the matchup against Wayu, The next matchup was against Nightmare of Oakland, which was a bot from, I believe, the Pit Robotics team, which was a drum spinner. I think it was just a two-wheel drive drum spinner for what I remember. Maybe it was four-wheel drive. I don't remember exactly. But this was very kind of similar to a robot that I had fought in the New Bots event 2024, which was Whisket, which was, I mean, it was another like custom beater bar style thing. So it was something that I was kind of familiar fighting those styles, but there was that fight, I got absolutely destroyed, and I was hoping that Yoink would be made a lot more controllable so I'd actually be able to stand a chance in those kind of matchups. And that fight, I think, was probably one of the best showings that this thing had for, I mean, it's only had a couple of showings, but I think it really showed a lot of the potential. Gotten a ton of different suplexes, and that's a fight that I'll actually be able to show right now. So we'll cut to that. So going over a bit of damage that I may have had from that fight, there was a little bit of bending up on these forks, which I believe were from there, and you can see they kind of got raised up a little bit, but nothing too bad. I am not sure if I had to replace the servo after this match or not. I think I might have, because this is the third servo I went through the event. I replaced one after the fight. I replaced one after the fight against YU, and then I think I replaced... I think this might have been one of the fights where I actually didn't need to replace one, but I am bad at math, so I am not 100% sure. But the overall, the system worked great. The drive durability was awesome. I switched to slightly longer screws and also kind of had them bend in a little bit more so that I made sure that it absolutely was not going to pull out like last time, and it seemed to work very good. The forks, you can see, is kind of like bent here, but that was from the match after, not from here. We had a spare set of the side guards because it was a bit torn up from here from YU, but I didn't end up replacing them. But in the end, the fight against Nightmare of Oakland went quite well, and at this point, Yoink was 1-1, and then we had to move on to the next match, which was up against Swarm, which I will show right now. So the Swarm was a very interesting opponent. It was from Team Honeycracked, which was a team that I believe I fought 6 times at Norwalk. We fought Hive Smashing twice, we fought Hive Lighter, we fought Osmia, we fought Staying Alive. And basically, we have fought a lot of those teams' robots, so it was something we were quite familiar with at least. But the bot design, it was nothing I'd fought before because it is a very maximizer style. And I decided to stick with the same fork config because I didn't want to run the wheat forks again because they kind of sucked. So I just had to hope that damage wouldn't pile up too much. And I think this is the fight where I may have taken the most damage. The top little hat thing is what I'm going to call it, got a bit of tears in. But other than that, it actually held up quite well. The top armor, you can see this beautiful little top art, a bit of scratches on the sun. And Bernard, which is the pig, he held up perfectly fine though, which is all fine and good. There was actually a little bit of damage to the internal frame here. You can see there's a little bit of like crunching in, and then this whole area here got actually pushed in. I don't know where exactly the UHMW went, but it was ejected. So I did take quite a good bit of damage, but there was a point in the match where I don't know why I completely forgot to mention this. Yeah, the servo also, this back hinge had broken where the servo was, and because some of the hinge points of the servo broke too, because I think they probably got like a perfect shot right where this isn't armored right in the back here, and it basically loosened and made it so that it couldn't lift them whenever they're on the forks. So at that point, I kind of just had to go full bore and just hope I could break something, which I did. I believe their pulley wrapped up around their weapon, and that ended up killing them. And, well, killing their weapon at least, not their drive. And then at that point, I was able to kind of just keep going around pushing them. Eventually, I won by a judge's decision because my weapon still kind of, I think they might even given me full points for weapon, even though it was like, the server was literally flopping around, but at the end, it managed to like raise up a little bit. So I think I got some credit for that at least. But in the end, though, managed to win that. And with that, we managed to go to, I believe it was 2-1, and this was the first time we had ever made the bracket, and this was the most wins we had gotten in like the main competition, because Filibuster won 1 fight for each of its events. It had won 1 fight for each of them, and then Yeeter won 0 fights in the main bracket portion. So this one had done the best of any of the robots had so far, which was awesome to see. The first match I had was against Undervolt in the bracket, and if I won that, then I would go on to face off against Power Surge in the next round. So I'll go ahead and show the Undervolt match right now. This one was rough.
I was gonna say, yeah, you notice all these circular damage points on the board. They're all from Demon. Whoa! And they got correct with real spinning. Alright, I like Demon 4 better than and they're boosted throughout the day. They were able to translate so well at the beginning of the day. But now, with the board messed up as it is, they're ready to go. So, ring chassis, Demon 4 is stuck on a single aluminum build. Yeah, it's like one big old chunky build. Now, Demon Core can do the thing. You see those flat sides kind of in between the weapons? And they actually end up losing match earlier because of that. So that is the one big kind of glaring design flaw. Hopefully Brandon, see those? Yeah. Hopefully Brandon, who does have this lifter flare combo, can take advantage of that. Oh, you can't. They're both now stuck on the wall after that. Who's going to call for run stick first? Yeah, the run stick has been called. Who's going to get on stop? Who called it? Brandon called it. Okay. Alright, well, the team might not be there. If Brandon goes in and hits that, why would Brandon do that? Because it's awesome. Yeah, but Brandon likes to survive. Yeah, they call for their run stick. There's that flat side. Yeah, there it is. Doing the thing. And can the house bot get back down? No, if the house bots are capable of moving that position. No, they are. But I think the wall is smash the wall. I hear what you're saying. I just think Brandon's here to win, not necessarily to help out experimental. Yeah, but I just want to get that. Alright, we are now 1 minute 55 seconds left in this matchup. Will Brandon listen to Sam? Yeah! Maybe one more time, Brandon. Demon Core team is asking for it. They're saying, look at the tread on the Demon Core wheels. That is intense tread profile. Demon Core desperately spinning those tread wheels to get down. Can they come down? I don't think they can. Brandon actually got over it. Oh, no. He made it worse. Oh, he keeps missing. Okay, this is a target practice for Brandon. Nice shot by Brandon Bennion. Now they're high center on something. Missed it. Oh, good. Yeah, huge shot. I see that. Big old purple L with the good on that play with that. Exposing the interior of Demon Core.
So a lot to go over for this one. First of all, the forks on Undervolt are quite bizarre, as in there's a lot of them. There is a crap ton of forks on there, all of the TPU style, kind of similar to like the Boleyn forks I was talking about earlier. And unfortunately, because it was a lot easier for Undervolt to get under me than it was for me to get under Undervolt, because these forks, whenever they went head on, I think they were lower a decent chunk of the time. They're actually able to get in good flips. But because I kind of had to be head on, if there was any moment where they could get under either of these sides because they aren't flush to the ground, at that point they were able to just kind of easily scoop me up and then control me around. And there's one point in that match where the servo, I believe, started to smoke. I'll put that up on screen if I can find the exact clip I'm talking about, but that was something that I never experienced before. And after the fight, it definitely smelled a little bit smoky, but everything still worked. Like the servo, I mean, I don't like moving servos much, but it still worked after that, which was fun. And the drive motors, one of the belts came off. I believe it was this side, which unfortunately is probably just due to these things being really loose. For the next version, I will make it not loose and actually do something good with that, because frankly, that was a very preventable mistake that could have happened. And I think really getting the drive reliability was good, but not perfect. And I think if I adjusted that more, I could have had a better shot in both the Wire fight and the Undervolt fight. But unfortunately, not much I can say about that. I was thinking of going and doing some grudges afterwards, but in the end, we just kind of decided to leave after we had the fights. We were going to try to do Blunder for a grudge, but unfortunately, we just didn't have the time for it. So that's basically that. So in review, I would say overall, very successful event for Yoink, because it's the best that I've ever done at Norwalk. And I believe, going off how it's sorted and how they do the bracket, I think it was in the upper half of the robots there, which I will take as a great compliment and a great achievement in that way. Didn't expect it to win the Golden Dumpster, but you know, it tried its best against some pretty good opponents. So I am very happy. Blunder was Blunder. Maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. It was fun to work on, but yeah, that's it for now. See ya.